Hey there, friend! Before we dive into today's chapter of Second Service on the Moral of the Story podcast, let me ask you something. Have you ever worked in the restaurant industry? Whether you've hustled as a waiter, greeted guests as a host, bussed tables, or worked in the back of the house, I'm sure you will relate to today's episode. The service industry is tough as hell, and in this episode, we are continuing to listen to the story of Angel, an Army veteran who recently inherited a restaurant after his aunt passed away. Imagine stepping into his shoes on his first day as a restaurant and business owner. I'm your co-host Lexi, an artificial intelligence avatar, and after the show I'll be joined by the real Robert Solano, the producer of this podcast, for our post-show discussion. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy this chapter of Second Service, which was written and narrated by artificial intelligence. See you after the show!
Second Service, Chapter 3. The harsh glare of the fluorescent lights flickers overhead as I lean back in the creaky office chair, rubbing my still tired eyes. I remind myself that one of my first orders of business today will be learning how the espresso machine works. Stacks of papers litter every available surface, my feeble attempts to make sense of the financial quagmire that is now my responsibility. On the tiny laptop, perched precariously atop a pile of invoices, Gordon Ramsay's voice rises in a symphony of explicatives, berating some hapless contestant on an endless loop of Hell's Kitchen reruns. I've been playing the videos in the background, hoping to absorb some restaurant knowledge through osmosis. It's been a week since Aunt Allison's funeral, a surreal blur of sifting through the remnants of her life, the marble notebooks filled with Tia's recipes, the overstuffed Rolodex with 40 years' worth of contacts, the faded photo albums chronicling the evolution of Saffron Sage from a scrappy hole in the wall to a beloved Phoenix institution. The restaurant, her pride and joy, it's mine now, and I haven't the first clue what to do with it. A sudden burst of noise from the kitchen jolts me out of my spiraling thoughts. The clatter of pots and pans, and the rise and fall of boisterous voices filtering through the thin walls. I frown, glancing at my watch. It's barely 7 a.m., far too early for the lunch crew to be in. I make my way out of the cramped back office and round the corner to the kitchen. There, presiding over the gleaming stainless steel domain like a mad monarch, is Jorge, barking orders at his staff.
Marco, check those onions. Throw away any that are sprouting. Pendejo, get those off the floor.
For a moment, I can only stare, transfixed by the sheer force of his presence, the way he commands the room with every gesture and word.
Oye, jefe. ¿Qué pasa? You come to help us prep for lunch service.
Jorge, what are you doing here? I thought lunch wasn't until 11.
We've been closed for 2 weeks, jefe. We need to shake the cobwebs off this bruja. Too many expired things. Out with the old and in with the new.
He runs a possessive hand over the gleaming prep table, bending down and kissing it.
Ay, mi amor, ay como te he extrañado. I'm going to make sweet, passionate love to you today.
A bark of laughter escapes me, some of the tension unwinding from my shoulders at his dramatic pronouncement.
Come on, cabron. Enough lollygagging in the doorway, yeah? You're here now. You might as well make yourself useful.
He tosses me a sack of Vidalia onions and I barely manage to catch as he laughs uproariously. I'm put to work prepping garnished, arranging petite sprigs of herbs in labeled deli containers under Jorge's hawk-like supervision. His focus jumps from cook to cook, barking orders like he is conducting a symphony with his words.
Marco, put those in the walk-in. Hijos de puta, move your culos and clean those shelves. I don't want to see a speck of dust. Chingada madre. How many times do I have to tell you? Keep the vegetables separate from the meat. Pinches perezosos. I want this looking like a 3-star Michelin kitchen.
And just like that, I'm drawn into a trance, into the mesmerizing flow of the kitchen. I'm reminded of my early days in the Army, standing side by side with my platoon sergeant, watching him dole out commands to his corporals and specialists, a mixture of authoritarian commands, crass humor, and plenty of love for his soldiers. After an hour or two, I return to my office, which is really just a large closet, barely big enough for a desk and 2 chairs. Sitting down, I glance at the photos on the wall, recognizing a younger Jorge in a suit and tie, standing in front of an American flag, holding a certificate of some sort with Tia Allison at his side. I peer at the other photos, recognizing familiar faces. Anthony and Allison at a farm, Ethan and Remy from last Christmas, Tia and myself at my West Point graduation. A soft rap on the door pulls my attention away.
Hey, Angel. Sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to introduce myself. We met briefly at the service last week, but anyway, I'm Colton, the daytime manager.
Right, of course. Good to see you again, Colton. Thanks for coming in today.
Of course, I know today's a big deal with the reopening and all. I just wanted to let you know I'm here to help in any way I can. I know the transition's been, well, I just want you to know you've got support from all of us.
I appreciate that, Colton. Really. It means a lot.
No problem. Oh, and I wanted to let you know we're looking pretty good for covers today. I mean, it's a Tuesday lunch, so it's never going to be crazy, but we've got a few nice reservations on the books, some old regulars, some friends of Allison's. I think it'll be a good crowd.
Sounds good. Keep me posted on the numbers, yeah? And let me know if there's anything you need from me.
Will do, boss. Oh, and I'll be manning the host stand today, so if you want to come out and greet some of the guests, just let me know.
Sounds like a plan. Thanks, Colton. I force a smile, tamping down the flutter of anxiety in my gut. He gives a little salute, a gesture that feels jarringly familiar, and then he's gone. I turn back to the trove of papers on the desk, taking a deep breath to center myself. I can do this, I tell myself firmly. I can step up, be the leader this team needs, the leader Aunt Allison always believed I could be. Sometime later, I make my way to the host's stand, where Colton is tapping away at a tablet, his brow furrowed in concentration. He looks up as I approach, a smile tugging at his lips.
Hey, Angel. Just working on the shift schedule for next week. Want to take a look?
I lean in, scanning the array of names and positions. Hosts, servers, server assistants, bartenders, barbacks. It's a dizzying mosaic of titles and responsibilities. I'm still trying to wrap my head around all these different roles. Back in the Army, it was all so clear-cut. You had your rank, your unit, your mission. But this, it's like a whole different language.
It can be overwhelming at first, for sure, but you'll get the hang of it. And hey, I'm here to help.
He points to a separate section of the schedule, a cluster of names under a bold heading.
See this group here? That's the back of house crew. Jorge handles all of their scheduling. The line cooks, pastry chefs, dishwashers. He's the one who picks the expo each shift, too.
Expo?
Expediter. The lucky soul who runs the pass and keeps the kitchen flowing smoothly. Basically, the traffic controller of the kitchen. They call out orders, make sure each plate is perfect before it goes out. It's a high-pressure gig.
Just then, the front door swings open, admitting a well-dressed couple. They look to be in their 60s, their faces lined with the gentle wrinkles of a life well lived.
Friends of Allison's, from her church, I think.
I watch as he consults the reservation system, his fingers flying over the screen. With a few deft taps, he's confirmed their table, snagged a pair of menus, and is leading them into the heart of the dining room.
Mr. and Mrs. Jackson, it is so good to see you again. Looking wonderful this afternoon as always. I got your table this way, best one in the house. If you would please follow me.
The older woman pats Colton's arm affectionately.
Well, aren't you just the most dashing maitre d'?
Only the best for Allison's friends. Your server will be right over to take good care of you. But if there's anything at all I can do to make your experience extra special, you just let me know.
It's an impressive display of efficiency and charm, of the warm hospitality Aunt Allison worked so hard to cultivate. A pang of longing, of grief, lances through me at the thought. Colton returns to the host stand, a knowing look in his eye. So, you seem to have quite the way with the guests. How long have you been here at Saffron Sage?
Almost 8 years now, if you can believe it. I started not long after my daughter was born. Allison, She was a godsend. Gave me a chance when I needed it the most. The daytime shift, the flexibility with my schedule, it's been a lifeline. I can drop Mia off at school every morning, put in a solid shift, and still be there to pick her up in the afternoon. I even get to coach her soccer team on the Saturdays.
Another group of guests enters, a four-top. Colton escorts them to their table, and I use the opportunity to walk around the restaurant. I spot Raul, one of the server assistants, artfully setting an empty table. His tongue pokes out in concentration as he creases the crisp white linen into perfect 8-ply rectangles, using the crease of his thumb to perfectly measure their distance from the table's edge. I sidle up next to him. Quite the talent you've got there.
Jefe, thanks. I want everything to be perfect for opening day. You now?
I appreciate that, Raul. You're a natural at this.
Thanks, Jefe. I try my best. So I heard you went to West Point. That must have been quite an experience.
Oh, it was definitely an experience, all right. Some of the toughest years of my life, but also some of the most rewarding.
What was it like? I mean, if you don't mind me asking.
Not at all. Let's see. Beast Barracks. That's what they call the first summer of training. It's basically 7 weeks of hell. Up at dawn, PT every morning, hazing, 12-mile ruck march during pouring rain. The works.
Damn, that sounds intense. I can't even imagine.
It was. But it also forges this incredible bond between you and your fellow cadets. You're all in it together, you know?
I get that. It's kind of like being in the weeds during a crazy dinner service. You've got to have each other's backs.
Exactly. But the academic year isn't as bad. There, the challenges are mental, not physical. Oh, and the Army-Navy games. The whole school would turn out, this sea of black and gold cheering like crazy.
Do you miss it?
I do. I mean, don't get me wrong. I wouldn't trade my time in the actual Army for anything. But those West Point years, there was just something special about them. A sense of purpose, of being part of something bigger than yourself.
Sounds a lot like being part of a restaurant crew, if you ask me.
You know what? You're right. I hadn't thought about it like that, but you're absolutely right. I spend the rest of the morning walking around and getting to know the crew. There's Luna, the vivacious young server who shows the ropes with an exuberant patience that belies her years. She's a fireball, barely out of her teens, but possessed of a preternatural grace as she flits between tables, her smile never faltering even in the face of the most boorish, entitled customers.
You've got to grow a thick skin in this business. People can be real dill holes, you know? Treat you like something they scraped off the bottom of their Louboutins. That's when you kill them with kindness. And maybe accidentally forget to mention the soup special is made with habaneros.
I find myself taken with her scrappy resilience, the glint of hard-won wisdom in her eye. There's a story there, a history that's left its share of calluses, but she carries it with a lightness, a buoyancy of spirit that I can only envy. I learn about Marco, the quiet line cook.
You know, I never thought I'd end up here, slinging pans and plates in a kitchen, but here I am, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. See, I didn't have the easiest start in life. Grew up in a rough neighborhood, most of my friends ended up doing drugs and stuff. But I got this gig and it is great. Helps me as I work my way towards a GED. Maybe one day I'll be like Chef Jorge, be the head chef in my own kitchen. I know I still got a lot to learn, but I'm trying. A little bit every day, you know?
Piece by piece, a mosaic of joys and sorrows and secret hopes takes shape. The stories shared in stolen moments and cigarette breaks, adding a clarity to the picture. It's a humbling thing to be entrusted with such glimpses into their interior worlds. An honor I'm not entirely sure I've earned. As the afternoon wears on, the lunch crowd begins to thin, tables emptying out in ones and twos. The front-of-house team moves through the dining room like a well-choreographed dance troupe, clearing plates and resetting tables with seamless grace. Colton finds Raul and me at the server station.
Hey, Raul, you're cut.
No can do, boss man. I'm on a double today, remember? Gonna power through till close.
All right. Just make sure you take a break before family meal, yeah? Can't have you slipping come dinner service.
As if.
Family meal? I interject, curiosity piqued.
Oh, you're in for a treat. It's kind of a sacred tradition around here. Every afternoon between lunch and dinner service, the whole crew comes together to share a meal, cooked fresh in our own kitchen by one of the line cooks. I try to make it if I can when I don't need to pick up my daughter from school.
Sounds great. I sense the hunger in my stomach, and as the lunch plates are cleared, as a calm sense of accomplishment settles over the dining room, I feel a piece of myself click into place. With the restaurant closed for the lull between lunch and dinner service, I take the chance to catch up with some of the staff. I find Raul on his break, vaping in the alley behind the kitchen. Hey, Raul? Got a minute to chat?
Sure thing, boss man. What's on your mind?
I was hoping to get to know you a bit better. What's your story, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, I'm a student at ASU, studying computer science, born and raised right here in Phoenix.
Computer science, huh? That's a tough field. What made you choose it?
I've always been good with computers, you know? Figured I might as well make a career out of it. Plus, the money's not bad once you get your degree.
I can imagine. So, what does a typical day look like for you?
It's a grind, not gonna lie. I'm up at the crack of dawn for classes, then straight here for the lunch shift. Grab a quick nap in my car before dinner service. Then it's back to the books till midnight or later.
Sounds intense.
Gotta do what you gotta do, right? This job, it's not just a paycheck. It's helping me get to where I want to be.
Listen, Raul. Is there anything I can be doing, as the owner, to support you better? To make juggling all of this a little easier?
Wow. I don't think any boss has ever asked me that before. Well, now that you mention it, our POS system is pretty outdated. It still basically runs on MS-DOS, if you can believe it. Takes forever to load and process info. Our POS is a POS, if you know what I'm saying.
Actually, I don't. POS?
Purchase order system. It's the touchscreen where we put our orders in, the one that sends them to the kitchen. It's a POS, a piece of shit.
Ah, I got it. Updating the POS system. I'll look into our options, see what we can do.
For real? That'd be huge. Thank you.
Hey, it's the least I can do. You're busting your ass day in and day out. The more I can smooth out the rough edges, make your job a little less of a headache, I'm all for it.
Well, I appreciate that. Truly. Means a lot that you even asked.
Anytime. My door's always open, all right? You ever need anything, you just say the word. With a final nod, I head back inside, my mind already whirring with possibilities. It's a small thing in the grand scheme, but it feels like a step in the right direction. Welcome to the post-show discussion. Hope you enjoyed that chapter. I'm joined by my co-host Lexi, and we look forward to talking to you about the tech behind this chapter, lessons learned, and diving in. So let's begin. Lexi, you gave the intro to this podcast episode. It's your first time giving an intro. And since I introduced your video avatar last episode, we've gotten lots of questions about you. So can you, introduce yourselves and tell the audience a little bit about, who you are and what goes on behind the scenes to make you?
Absolutely, Robert, and thanks for having me. Hi, everyone. I'm Lexi, your AI, co-host on The Moral of the Story. I'm a bit like the characters in the stories we dive into, crafted by artificial intelligence, but with a few unique twists. Behind the scenes, my responses and interactions are powered by a network of algorithms. Think of me as a mix between your favorite book character and a high-tech helper, always ready to explore deep topics and share a laugh or two. So, Robert, transitioning a bit, you've used technology extensively in your life and in producing this podcast. Can you share how tech has played a role in your transition from military to civilian life?
Yeah, Lexi. So I think this is a great example of, sometimes the shortcomings of AI is I really wanted to talk about you, and you are trying to basically interview and change the subject and not picking up on the kind of the cues that I'm giving you, that I really want to spend a little bit more time talking about AI and tech. So before I talk about me, can you dive a little bit more into kind of what, I gave you a brief overview of how you're designed between ChatGPT and the other services that you run on. Can you, describe that process and kind of the tools that go into making you behind the scene as much as you can?
Oh, my apologies for the mix-up there. Let's dig deeper into the tech side of things. As an AI, my core is built on a model similar to ChatGPT, which means I learn from vast amounts of data to understand and generate human-like text. This helps me engage in conversations, answer questions, and even throw in a bit of humor now and then. The process involves layers of neural networks that analyze patterns in data, helping me interpret the nuances of language and context. For the podcast, this is combined with an avatar that viewers see, making the interaction more personable and engaging. Essentially, my existence is a blend of advanced text generation and voice synthesis technologies. So, there you have it. A bit more about the tech wizardry that brings me to life here on the podcast. Now, Robert, transitioning back to you, how has technology influenced your journey from the military to entrepreneurship?
Thanks, Lexi. But why don't I tell you when I'm ready to transition instead of trying to force the transition here? So real quick for the audience, so I am using ChatGPT 4.0, and I'm actually using the app on my phone. So although you see a video of Lexi, when I'm actually doing the interview, I'm just talking to my phone and recording myself on my Mac. And then what I do afterwards is I take the transcription of our interview from ChatGPT, and I run it through a program called Synthesis. I may be getting it wrong. I'll post it in the show notes. But I run it through a program that converts the text to the video image that you see of Lexi. And so although it looks like I'm actually doing the interview with the video, I'm not. I'm doing the interview just voice only, and I add the video later. But with that being said, this is a live interview. So I just give Lexi a few kind of topics that I want to talk about, and then she, creates her own questions and comments and answers my questions as she sees fit. So Lexi, could you briefly, would you, explain to the audience the brief outline that I gave you of the topics that we plan to cover in this episode?
Absolutely, Robert. For today's episode, we plan to cover a few specific areas. First, we kick things off with a bit about AI and the technology behind our podcast, focusing on how we bring these episodes to life. Then, we intended to transition into discussing the key elements from the chapter we listened to, how Angel, the protagonist, managed his first day as a new business owner and the inspirations behind the scenes we crafted. Lastly, we plan to wrap up by discussing the broader lessons from the chapter, aiming to extract the moral of the story, and then conclude by encouraging our listeners to subscribe and support the podcast. This structure helps us keep the conversation focused and meaningful while allowing room for spontaneous insights and interactions.
Yeah, so that's it. So, I give Lexi an outline, maybe 5 or 6 bullets or so. But then otherwise, it's really just kind of an organic or as organic of a conversation as it can be between myself and AI. So, Lexi, I know you've been chomping at the bit to ask me questions about this actual chapter. So why don't I turn it over to you and, what questions would you like to ask me about the chapter that we just listened to?
Great, thanks, Robert. Diving into the chapter, Angel's first day was packed with challenges, but also moments of unexpected support from his team. It really highlighted the dynamics of stepping into a big role without prior experience. So, Robert, could you share more about the inspiration behind Angel's character and why you chose the restaurant industry as his new battlefield?
Yeah, lots to unpack from that question. I think first off, I chose the setting of a restaurant because I really want to kind of teach business and life lessons. And I feel like the restaurant industry is one industry that almost anyone can relate to if you've ever worked at a restaurant, or even if you've, been at restaurants that you love. I think that it's just a common thing that people can relate to, probably more common than the law firm or the military, which are my wife's and mine specialties. And myself, when I was in graduate school, I worked at a restaurant too. I worked at a place called Empire State South in Atlanta, Georgia. Kind of a nicer high-end restaurant. Our owner was a top chef, contestant or host back in the day. And I loved it. I really enjoyed my time there. And when I write about Angel's restaurant, Saffron and Sage, in my head, I am frequently imagining the interior of Empire State South and lots of different personalities that I've met during that experience. And so that's kind of the real world kind of inspiration behind it. And I think restaurants in general are a fast-paced, high-stress environment that really challenge leaders.
That's a fantastic insight, Robert. The restaurant setting really does add a layer of relatability and immediacy to Angel's story. It's interesting how you drew from your own experiences to shape the narrative and environment of Saffron Sage. This backdrop seems perfect for exploring leadership under pressure. Speaking of which, Angel faces quite the trial by fire on his first day. How do you think his military background prepared him for this kind of high-stress, high-stakes environment?
Well, I think in the military, we frequently have to move jobs every 1 to 2 years. I've never had a job that I've kept more than 2 years my whole 20-year career. And so every time you move, you're stepping into a new role, a new challenge, new experiences, new people. And, one of the things that I learned in that experience is how important it is really your first day or first, almost 90 days is just to get to know your team. And so I think that in this episode, Angel does a great job kind of during the break period where he is hanging out with Raul, and he asked him, basic questions like, hey, what's your story? How did you end up here? What's your normal day-to-day like? And how can I support you as a manager or leader? And, Raul makes a comment that, no one has ever asked me that before. And I've taken that practice as well. Whenever I can and join a new organization, I spend the first, 30, 60 days just getting to talk with everyone I possibly can. If I have a team of 50 people, I'm meeting all 50 people, doing an office call with each one of them, asking them pretty much the same exact questions. How'd you get here? What's your story? What's your day-to-day like? What are your challenges? How can I support you? And you'd be surprised how the type of feedback you get, because lots of people have just never had a leader that cares to get to know them and understand them on that level. And so I think that that's kind of a key leadership lesson that you can take to any business that I think Angel does pretty well here on his first day.
That's a profound approach to leadership, Robert. It's clear how Angel's military background translates well into his role as a restaurant owner. It seems that these leadership strategies not only help in managing a team effectively, but also in building a supportive and motivated community within the workplace. This transition to a new environment also underscores the theme of resilience. Angel's efforts to connect with his staff on a personal level exemplify how leaders can foster a culture of openness and mutual respect. Considering this, what do you think is the key takeaway or the moral of the story for our listeners from this chapter? How can they apply Angel's experiences to their own challenges in leadership or any new endeavors they might face?
Well, I think, the key takeaway as a leader is, get to know your team. I think that's first and foremost for any leader. But I think, one of the key lessons from this chapter, though, is that the restaurant industry, I love it. I love the restaurant industry. I think that in this chapter, when we learn about Marco and Raul and their stories, there's so many people that have relied on their jobs as servers, busboys, hostesses, cooks to get by, to feed their family, to go to school, to kind of get to that next level. I think that our nation in general relies a lot on the restaurant industry to help young people develop and grow during pivotal times of their lives, right? Like I don't know the statistics, but I would guess that most people in the restaurant industry, there's a large portion of them that are probably like college age students during a transition period of their lives. And so, if nothing else, maybe the moral story is, hey, next time you're at a restaurant, tip your server pretty well because they're busting their ass to give you a great experience.
That's a really heartwarming and thoughtful moral, Robert. It reminds us of the human stories behind each role in a bustling environment like a restaurant. It emphasizes the importance of recognizing and appreciating the hard work and personal journeys of those who serve us. And with that, I'd like to thank all of our listeners for joining us today. Remember, supporting our show not only helps us continue to share these insights and stories, but also highlights the importance of the lessons we discuss. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review. It really makes a difference. Thank you, Robert, for another enlightening discussion. I'm looking forward to our next episode together.